a WikiVidi Documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy.
Fargo film. Fargo is a 1996 British-American black comedy crime film written, produced, edited, and directed by Joel and Ethan Coen. Frances McDormand stars as a pregnant Minnesota police chief investigating roadside homicides that ensue after a desperate car salesman hires two criminals to kidnap his wife in order to extort a hefty ransom from his wealthy father-in-law. Fargo premiered at the 1996 Cannes Film Festival, where Joel Coen won the festival's Prix de la mise en scène, and the film was nominated for the Palme d'Or. A critical and commercial success, Fargo received 7 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture. McDormand received the Best Actress Oscar, and the Coens won in the Best Original Screenplay category. The film was selected in 2006 for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant, one of only 6 films so designated in its first year of eligibility. The American Film Institute named it one of the 100 greatest American movies of all time in 1998. A Coen-produced FX television series of the same name, inspired by Fargo, and taking place in the same universe, started in 2014 and was critically acclaimed. Plot. In the winter of 1987, Jerry Lundegaard, the sales manager at an Oldsmobile dealership in Minneapolis, is desperate for money. He floated a $320,000 GMAC loan and collateralized it with non-existent dealership vehicles, and is unable to pay back the loan. On the advice of dealership mechanic and paroled ex-convict Shep Proudfoot, Jerry travels to Fargo, North Dakota, and hires small-time cons Geir Grimsrud and Carl Showalter to kidnap his wife John and extort a ransom from his wealthy father-in-law and boss, Wade Gustafson, in return for a new car and half of the $80,000 ransom. Jerry pitches Gustafson a lucrative real estate deal, and he agrees to front $750,000. Jerry considers calling off the kidnapping, but learns that Gustafson plans to make the deal himself, giving Jerry a finder's fee. At Jerry's home, Carl and Geir carry out the kidnapping. As they transport Jean to their remote cabin on Moose Lake, a Minnesota state trooper pulls them over outside Brainerd for driving without temporary tags. When the trooper hears a sound from the back seat, Geir kills him, then chases down 2 eyewitnesses and shoots them. The following morning, Brainerd Police Chief Marge Gunderson discovers that the dead trooper was ticketing a car with dealership plates. Later, 2 men driving a dealership vehicle checked into the nearby Blue Ox Motel with 2 call girls, then placed a call to Proudfoot. After questioning the prostitute, she drives to Gustafson's dealership, where Proudfoot feigns ignorance and Jerry insists no cars are missing. While in Minneapolis, Marge reconnects with Mike Yanagita, an old classmate. Mike awkwardly and aggressively tries to romance Marge before breaking down, saying his wife has died. Jerry informs Gustafson that the kidnappers have demanded $1 million and will deal only through him. Meanwhile, Carl, in light of the complication of 3 murders, demands that Jerry hand over the entire $80,000. GMAC gives Jerry 24 hours to prove the existence of the vehicles or face legal action. Carl is beaten by a furious Proudfoot for bringing him under suspicion. Carl orders Jerry to deliver the ransom immediately. Gustafson insists on making the money drop himself. At the drop point in a Minneapolis parking garage, he tells Carl he will not hand over the money without seeing John. An enraged Carl shoots and kills Gustafson, but not before Gustafson shoots Carl in the face. After fleeing the scene, Carl is astounded to discover that the briefcase contains $1 million. He removes $80,000 to split with Geyer, then buries the rest alongside the highway. At the cabin, Geyer has killed John. Carl says they must split up and leave the state immediately. Carl and Geyer get into a heated argument over who will keep the dealership car, with Carl using his injury as justification. In response, Geyer kills Carl with an axe. Marge learns that Yanagita's dead wife is neither dead nor his wife. Reflecting on Yanagita's convincing lies, Marge returns to Gustafson's dealership. Jerry continues to insist that he is not missing any cars. Marge asks him to check the inventory, then spots him fleeing the dealership, and calls the state police. The next morning, she drives to Moose Lake on a tip from a local bar owner who reported a funny-looking guy bragging about killing someone. Outside a cabin, she finds the dealership car nearby. Geyer is feeding Carl's dismembered body into a wood chipper. Marge shoots him in the leg as he tries to flee, and arrests him. North Dakota police arrest Jerry at a motel outside Bismarck. Marge's husband Norm, whose mallard painting has been selected for a 3-cent postage stamp, complains that his friend's painting will be on the first-class stamp. Marge reassures Norm that lots of people use 3-cent stamps. The two happily anticipate the birth of their child in 2 months. Claims of factual basis. The film opens with the following text, closing credits. However, they're the standard all-persons fictitious disclaimer for a work of fiction. Regarding this apparent discrepancy, the Coen brothers claimed that they based their script on an actual criminal event, but wrote a fictional story around it. We weren't interested in that kind of fidelity, Joel Coen said. The basic events are the same as in the real case, but the characterizations are fully imagined. If an audience believes that something's based on a real event, it gives you permission to do things they might otherwise not accept. The brothers have modified their explanation more than once. In 1996, Joel Coen told a reporter that, contrary to the opening graphic, the actual murders were not committed in Minnesota. Many Minnesotans speculated that the story was inspired by T. Eugene Thompson, a street Paul attorney who was convicted of hiring a man to murder his wife in 1963, near the Coens' hometown of St. Louis Park, but the Coens claimed that they had never heard of Thompson. After Thompson's death in 2015, Joel Coen changed the explanation again. The story was completely made up. Or, as we like to say, the only thing true about it is that it's a story. The film's special edition DVD contains yet another account that the film was inspired by the 1986 murder of Hella Crafts from Connecticut at the hands of her husband, Richard, who disposed of her body through a wood chipper. Locations. Fargo was filmed during the winter of 1995, mainly in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, and around the actual town of Brainerd. Due to unusually low snowfall totals in central and southern Minnesota that winter, scenes requiring snow-covered landscapes had to be shot in northern Minnesota and eastern North Dakota. Jerry's initial meeting with Carl and Geyer was shot at a pool hall and bar called the King of Clubs in the northeast section of Minneapolis. It was later demolished, along with most other buildings on that block of Central Avenue, and replaced by low-income housing. Gustafson's auto dealership was actually Wally McCarthy Oldsmobile in Richfield, a southern suburb of Minneapolis. The site is now occupied by Best Buy's national corporate headquarters. The "Welcome to Brainerd" Paul Bunyan statue was built for the film in the northeast corner of North Dakota, near the Canadian border. The Blue Ox Motel truck stop was Stockman's Truck Stop in South St. Paul, which is still in business. Embers, the restaurant where Carl discussed the ransom drop with Gustafson, was located in St. Louis Park, the Coens' hometown. The building now houses a medical outpatient treatment center. The Lakeside Club, where Marge interviewed the hookers, was a family restaurant, now closed, in Marteau Midi, Minnesota. The kidnappers' Moose Lake hideout actually stood on the shore of Square Lake near May, Minnesota. The cabin was relocated to Barnes, Wisconsin in 2002. The Adena police station, where the interior police headquarters scenes were filmed, is still in operation, but has been completely rebuilt. The Carlton Celebrity Room was an actual venue in Bloomington, Minnesota, and Jose Feliciano did once appear there, but it had been closed for almost 10 years. When filming began, the Feliciano scene was shot at the Chanhassen Dinner Theater in Chanhassen, near Minneapolis. The ransom drop was filmed in 2 adjacent parking garages on South 8th Street in downtown Minneapolis. Scenes in the Lundegaard's kitchen were shot in a private home on Pillsbury Avenue in Minneapolis, and the house where Mr. Mora described the funny-looking little guy to police is in Hallock, in northwest Minnesota. The motel, outside of Bismarck, where the police finally catch up with Jerry, is the Hitching Post Motel in Forest Lake, north of Minneapolis. While none of Fargo was actually filmed in Fargo, the Fargo Moorhead Convention, and several props used in the film, including the wood chipper. After the movie's release, by some accounts, Brainerd was invaded by shovel-toting moviegoers searching for the buried ransom cash, inspired by the dubious, based on a true story, announcement in the opening credits. Accent. The film's illustrations of Minnesota nice and distinctive regional accents and expressions made a lasting impression on audiences. Years later, locals reported continuing to field tourist requests to say, "Yeah, you betcha," and other taglines from the movie. Dialect coach Liz Himmelstein maintained that the accent was another character. She coached the cast using audio tapes and field trips. Another dialect coach, Larissa Coconut, noted that the small-town Minnesota accent is close to the sound of the Nords and the Swedes, which is where the musicality comes from. She taught McDormand Minnesota nice, and the characteristic head nodding to show agreement. The strong accent spoken by Macy's and McDormand's characters, which was exaggerated for effect, is less common in the Twin Cities, where over 60% of the state's population lives. The Minneapolis and St. Paul dialect is characterized by the northern city's vowel shift, which is also found in other places in the northern United States as far east as Rochester, New York. Casting. The Coens initially considered William H. Macy for a smaller role, but they were so impressed by his reading that they asked Macy to come back in and read for the role of Jerry. According to Macy, he was very persistent in getting the role, saying, "I found out that the Coen brothers, were auditioning in New York still, so I got my jolly Lutheran ass on an airplane and walked in and said, I want to read again. Because I'm scared you're going to screw this up and hire someone else. I actually said that. You know, you can't play the card too often as an actor. Sometimes it just blows up in your face, but I said, guys, this is my role. I want this." Critical response. Fargo holds a 93% approval rating and 8.7/10 average on Rotten Tomatoes based on 88 reviews. The site's critical consensus reads, "Violent, quirky, and darkly funny." Fargo delivers an original crime story and a wonderful performance by McDormand. The film scores 85 out of 100 on Metacritic, based on 24 reviews, indicating universal acclaim. Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert each named Fargo the best film of 1996. Ebert called it one of the best films I've ever seen, adding that, "Films like Fargo are why I love the movies." He later ranked it fourth on his list of the best films of the 1990s. Fargo was ranked 84th on the American Film Institute's 100 Years.100 Movies list in 1998, and 93rd on AFI's 100 Years.100 Laughs list. The Marge Gunderson character was ranked 33rd on AFI's 100 Years.100 Heroes. The independent film, 30 most significant independent films of the last 30 years.
Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?